is that it has enough resilient creatures that it can just put down one thing and then have that be damaging enough to be able to force a blue-white player to be able to respond.
Yeah, this is all about pacing the game here for the green-white deck. You know, you don't have to extend a ton, and you can make it so the verdicts aren't that good. Experiment 1 is a really, really nice start. Again, this is a card that does live through Supreme Verdict, assuming that your draw is pretty good. And we'll see exactly what he has to follow that up with. You know, does he have a card like Voice of Resurgence or anything like that, you know, to grow the Experiment 1 and make things difficult for Mytinger as he's going to pass the turn back. And Gearhart going to draw his card, and we'll see exactly how things are going to go here. The nice thing, and these are the kind of aggro decks that I like to play, is that you can pace the game in a certain way. You can, what I like to call it is building waves of creatures. Instead of just being like mono red and just shove all in and hope things work out in your favor, you can build waves. So, in comes the Experiment 1. Here's a Selesnya Charm to make it 2/2 token, but more importantly, to be able to evolve the Experiment 1. Will this resolve? As John looks like he might have a negate in his hand for this Selesnya Charm. Does he want to negate this bad boy? Oof. Or would he rather pick a better spot with that? Because Advent of the Worm is a card that green-white does play, as is Rootborn Defenses, but...
I mean, it can be hard to find your spot. It can be hard. One negate, only one negate in the deck. His counterspell suite is 2 dissolve, 2 syncopate, 1 negate. Done.
Yeah, fair enough. There
Divination.
Is a Divination. 2 cards coming for John.
I love Divination. I've played Divination not so long ago in blue-white control, and I think it's a great card.
Yeah, the Divination is this kind of weird card because people are like too proud to play it because it isn't good enough, is what people like to say. But I don't really agree. I think you know, the card drawing isn't what it used to be. Here's a Lockdown Smiter going to evolve the Experiment 1, get in for 2. Card drawing isn't what it used to be, and sometimes, you know, you can't be too proud to play a card if it's the right card that you need to play.
I mean, brute force is all you need. I actually think that most of the people playing Think Twice, I think that they were fooling themselves that it was good back in the day. But, you know, I'm in the minority on that one.
Here's the Supreme Verdict on a 2-for-1. Take care of that Smiter, take care of the Experiment 1. Gearhart going to untap and draw. He's got a Boon Satyr in his hand. Got a couple other things hanging out there as well. Experiment 1 can restart the wave of creatures here. And there is Experiment 1. Follow that up with a Voice of Resurgence, evolve and pass. So this is a good way to start rebuilding things. Now that you're through one Supreme Verdict, if another Supreme Verdict does show up to the party, it's not even that good right now. You got a Voice of Resurgence to leave a token behind, but you've built another nice wave of creatures, which is important.
Now, looking over John Mytinger's deck list, he's got one card in here I really love. He's got 1 Cyclonic Rift in his deck. I'm a big fan of that card in this style of deck. The second Supreme Verdict makes an elemental leaf left behind. But yeah, Cyclonic Rift, I think more people are going to be playing this card in blue control decks in the future.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Really versatile bounce spell, which is what you kind of want. Voice token left behind, so just a 1/1 elemental. You see Gearhart does have a Boon Satyr in his hand, so he's going to bestow. He's going to get in for 5. I'm going to knock Mytinger down to 12. And so again, this is just another wave here. Now this is his third and basically his final wave. So this is the wave that's going to probably have to be good enough unless he does have some favorable draw steps. So you do see Boon Satyr on the screen making that voice into a 5/5 token. If he does deal with a voice token, then a 4/2 is left. So I guess you could say that the actual Boon Satyr would be wave number 4.
Nice. Now, you cast Boon Satyr a lot over the evening. Did you ever get the beautiful Boon Satyr to save my guy and kill your guy, and then you kill my Boon Satyr creature, and then there's a Boon Satyr, and then they kill that? Just that crazy cascade of card advantage?
The crazy loop. It never broke that way, but you know, there were a couple of combats where Boon Satyr was particularly good. Here's a Jace Architect of Thought going to go down, so here comes some cards. A Plains, and a Plains.
I bet you that he's going to get 2 planes.
Oh, wow, you...
Look at that.
That's why we bring you in the booth.
That's right.
That's what you're here for.
If you are just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan, here in the booth with the one and only Cedric Phillips. This is SCG Live, the StarCityGames.com Open Series in Cleveland. You can see on the left Ryan Gearhart with green-white aggro, a elemental, Boon Satyred up, faces off against John Mytinger's blue-white control, which has a Jace Architect of Will, and I believe, unless there's some land hiding, only 2 land open right now.
All right, so Gearhart does draw another land, and he's deciding, do I want to attack Jace or do I want to attack you? Do I want to try to get you dead or kill your Planeswalker? He's opted to kill the Planeswalker. He's going to play a Temple Garden and just have 1 card left in his hand as he does pass the turn back. We know it's a land. We'll see if Mytinger is able to pick up that read as well as he draws his card for the turn. Now again, we do know that John has a Sphinx's Revelation in his hand. He also has the 3rd Supreme Verdict as well, so a very strong draw for him in this first game.
Another land. Wow, where did it come from?
Yeah.
Is there anyone who knows? Oh, there's Jace.
So see what John's going to do this turn. That's passing back with a bunch of mana open, so that's a pretty good read of, okay, it's a Sphinx's Revelation time here as Gearhart has drawn another land. One of the problems with green-white is that when it does float out, it's very difficult for it to be able to win. And, you know, the thing is that its rushes are typically, you know, pretty good against this deck because you can build a board where your creatures actually do live, be it a Voice of Resurgence, Regenerate Experiment 1, and be able to keep rushing your opponent. The Revelation for 4 is going to make that really, really difficult for Gearhart to be able to get back into this game.
Oof. Syncopate, land, Azorius Charm, and a Mutavault. Ouch. I mean, right now, it's going to take lots of running threats from Ryan Gearhart to be able to claw back into this game.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the places where it starts is Advent of the Worm, but I'm not even sure how that good that's going to be now because, again, Mytinger does have Syncopates in his hand, so he'll be able to chase those down pretty well. That turn 2 negate actually ended up being a really big deal, and that Selesnya Charm, as Experiment 1 would have actually been able to go to a 3/3, deal more points of damage, regenerate after the first Wrath. Not be able to regenerate after the second one, most likely, but, you know, that really changed the dynamic of the game as Mytinger's just going to discard a Plains and pass the turn.
No play from Ryan Gearhart at the end of the turn, looking for some action, something. Can come in for another 5. And John does have an Azorius Charm in hand, not to mention if he has drawn anything else that's useful.
Yep. You know, will he use it? That's the question. Gearhart doesn't have much of an option. He's got to just get into the red zone. So here's an Azorius Charm. Token's going to go bye-bye, and then Boon Satyr is actually going to come into play.
Yeah, that is not cast. It doesn't get another opportunity to be countered. It's just changes its form. According to some sort of weird magic logic that is in the Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah. Don't ask me. Don't ask me. Now, Gearhart didn't play his land for the turn, and again, he's playing a deck that does have Syncopate in it, so this could actually end up to hurt him a little bit here by not playing that land. Will he be able to pay for a Syncopate here, which would be for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Advent of the Worm would get countered by Syncopate here, so there is Advent of the Worm, and a Syncopate's going to be able to shut this down.
Wow, that one... Well, I guess the one land wouldn't have mattered. Almost, very close. Poor Worm.
No, it's going to get exiled, so no Worm token here for Gearhart, as he's going to have to untap, and as you mentioned, he's going to have to draw a string of spells to be able to get back into this game. Draws a Boon Satyr for the turn. See if he wants to play the land this time, so that he can play around Syncopate better. Again, this is something that he needs to be cognizant of. He's just going to cast it in his main phase.
I like that. A lot of people have what I like to call end-of-your-turn-itis. And end-of-your-turn-itis, you're like, oh, I've got this card I can cast as an instant. It doesn't mean it's the best time to cast it.
So he's trying to play around a counterspell. By doing that, it does open himself up to just getting Detention Sphered or having this die to Supreme Verdict. So there's a trade-off there. On which card do you think you can actually play around? Would you rather play around Counter Magic or a removal spell?
Now, John is low in life, but he has a Mutavault sneakily hanging out over there on the far right of his board, top of your screen. So he is not defenseless even just on board.
And John drew a very good card last turn, and that was Sphinx's Revelation. That's probably going to be the nail in the coffin. Not the first time we've seen something like this happen from a blue-white control deck, where, you know, the small Revelation is the one that makes things difficult, and the other Revelation is what makes things impossible, as Mutavault's going to trade here with the Boon Satyr.
Block. And away it goes. Land from Ryan Gearhart. Perhaps he overheard you, or the spirit of your ideas floated over across the way. Be pretty hard in this full room. 406 players here today in Cleveland.
Well, here's a rev for 5. Couple of lands. Make it 3 lands. It's a rev for 4.
For 5?
Rev for 5. My apologies.
Yeah, this is reminiscent to me of Max... Oh, no, I should say... Was it Max Tietz's Sphinx's Revelation into nothing? Or was... in the top 8?
I believe so. Of those cards, a couple of lands there and a Detention Sphere drawn. So now Mytinger's going to draw a card. Mutavault is the card drawn here. But I mean, for the most part, he's been bricking, but this isn't something that Gearhart can really take advantage of. John is just looking for a way to actually close out the game. You know, be it one of those 2 Elspeth Sun Champions or one of those 2 Aetherlinks he has in his deck. Looks like Gearhart may have drawn in a Johnny for the turn.
Now, a Johnny might not have anything to accentuate or pump up right now, but it does have an ultimate ability, and he does have 20 life, so...
It's a place to start. I mean, at this point, you just want to play some cards to make Mytinger want to use his spells. You see he's going to take a look at a Johnny, and we'll bring a Johnny up on the screen for you guys at home so you can see exactly what the Planeswalker does do. Again, the 3 mana starts at 4 loyalty, does tick up to 5 with the first activation. Don't have to have a creature in play for it to target it. As it says, up to 1 target creature on it. And then the -3 ability is the more important one there when you're working with Advent of the Worms and Boon Satyr and friends.
Are we going to see Mutavault march on in?
Never a comfortable feeling when a blue-white player is counting how much mana they have.
Another land. Three mana Detention Sphere? Maybe just 2 mana Activate Mutavaults?
Yeah, he definitely has the options here. And again, if you're the blue-white player, that's exactly what you want to be. You want to be the one with the options. Detention Sphere, going to take care of that. This is an Elspeth, maybe? Yeah, that'll probably close it out.
Lots of soldiers.
Yeah. Mytinger's sitting at 14. Soldiers are going to come into play. And this is what Elspeth does. It's such a great card because when you play it and you activate it, it's great on defense and it's great on offense too. 3 soldiers are just a lot to overcome, and just waves of those happening is just very, very good against all decks, really.
Yeah. I mean, a part of the reason Assemble the Legion is so good is the swarm that it creates is really, really devastating, given time. Elspeth makes an immediate swarm.
Yeah. There's no wasting time here with Elspeth, and the other ability is certainly good as well, as they search for 3 soldier tokens to be able to put into play before Mytinger does pass the turn back over to Gearhart.
Gearhart, right now, I think his only path out of this is probably Advent of the Worm plus help.
Yeah, I mean, if that. Elspeth just does such a nice job of closing the game out.
Oh, yeah, Elspeth just, again, takes care of Advent.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think that, with that being said, then, I don't think there's anything for Ryan to do but just see if he can glean more information.
Yeah, I mean, no reason to concede, of course. You're playing for top 8, see if you can find a card in your opponent's deck that you didn't expect. Negate, obviously coming in the early turns, is something that you don't expect in the main deck from a blue-white deck. But yeah, if you can pick up on a card or anything like that through these last couple of turns, then he'll at least be learning something as he moves on to the final game. Or as he moves on to the first sideboard game. God's winning the draw there from Gearhart. He's just going to pack it in.
There we go. Going to our sideboards, we've seen Ryan Gearhart under the camera now twice before. So if you've been watching all day, you might have a sense of what he has in his sideboard. But this is your deck, Cedric. So what do you see happening? What's he got in the board? What's he going to bring in?
Well, there's 4 copies of Unflinching Courage, which obviously aren't very good in this matchup. They're for the red decks. 3 copies of Archangel of Thuna for your mid-range matchups, as are the 3 Tristani, Selesnya's Voice, along with the planes in the sideboard, so you can actually board up to 24 lands to consistently cast the 4 and 5 mana spells. So the only cards that are going to come in are 4 Rootborn Defenses. This is a card that Craig Wesco played in the main deck of his Pro Tour Dragon's Maze winning deck, along with a lot of the other players who played green-white at that tournament. You know, just countering a Supreme Verdict, being able to populate, stuff like that. Again, you just want to put the tension on the blue-white deck to have the answer at the right time, but you can actually have trumps to the things that they do have. I mean, easy cards to sideboard out here. I'm not a very big fan of a Johnny Caller the Pride in this particular matchup. The rest of the cards I actually like quite a bit. When I was playing in Split yesterday, I just boarded out 2 of Johnny Caller the Pride and 2 Elvish Mystics and just called it a day because, you know, Elvish Mystic is really good on turn 1, and past that it's actually quite poor, so you don't want to draw a lot of them. There are times when a Johnny can actually be pretty good. It's just like, you know, a fireball type effect. But for the most part, I like boarding out 2 of those. I like boarding out 2 Mystics. Again, by boarding out a Johnny, it's a 3-mana spell, and you're trading that for another 3-mana spell, so it doesn't really affect your curve very much. And it's kind of call it a day.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as a deck like Ryan is playing, that your opponent is going to have to Supreme Verdict. So having a follow-up from the Supreme Verdict be a little, like, nada, it's not very exciting. So you don't think there's anything else to take out? I don't know, I'm just curious.
No, I mean, a lot of the cards, you're obviously not going to sideboard out any of the creatures. All of your creatures are actually tailor-made to be good against this deck. Again, Fleece Main Line because of the monstrous ability, Voice Resurgence because of the tension that it puts on the opponent, Smiter because it's uncounterable, Boon Satyr because it's an instant, and then Experiment 1 because it's just a good way to get things started and it can be regenerated post-verdict. So all those things are going to stay in. Celestia Charm for its versatility, +2/+2 is relevant. Being able to make a guy post-wrath or post-removal spell is relevant as well. well. Advent of the Worm, same sort of thing. So the only cards that really have the wiggle room are Elvish Mystic, which again we're sideboarding 2 of those out. 2 of Johnny Call are the prize because the Planeswalker for the most part doesn't do very much. And then God's Willing is a card I actually love a ton in this matchup because it counters Azorius Charm and it counters Attention Sphere for 1 mana, and scrying one to be able to control your draw step is not irrelevant. And you know, there is the off chance that it can push through those last points of damage, maybe through an Elspeth token or something like that. So I don't think you change a lot. I think the deck is actually kind of tailored to beat a blue-white strategy and kind of just employing a lot of the things that Craig Wesco put in place at the Pro Tour that he won and just adopting them here.
John, on the other hand, with a blue-white control deck, has a lot of cards he could potentially bring in. 3 Last Breath, 2 Rapid Hybridization, 2 Frostborn Weird, 2 Celestial Flare. Now, I don't think all of those should come in, but they all are options. 2 Negate, 2 Pithing Needle, 1 Jace Memory Adept. I don't think any of those should come in, but one card I do see in the sideboard that I really like, definitely the 1 Glare of Heresy. The Glare of Heresy able to take out any of the green-white cards, of which there are quite a few, but taking out Voice of Resurgence and leaving no elemental behind, that's a very powerful effect. And it doesn't hurt that it also takes out the Fleecemane Lions and the Loxodon Smiters. What do you think about a card like Last Breath? Obviously, it can take care of the Voice of Resurgence, but there are a lot of cards it cannot target.
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at the cards that it can't actually kill. Elvish Mystic, a card that you're boarding, that I presume Ryan will be boarding 2 out. I mean, there's a potential to board out all 4 of those. Experiment 1 you can also catch as well, depending on how the draw lines up. And then you mentioned Voice of Resurgence, but outside of that, I mean, again, Fleecemane Lion, Loxodon Smiter, Boon Satyr, Advent of the Worm. I suppose a Celestial Charm token, but yeah, I mean, I don't think you mind if that's actually what Last Breath's targeting. There's not a lot of targets for it here in this particular deck.
Yeah, I think the sideboard I like for this is 1 Glare of Heresy, 2 Celestial Flare, and I actually think I would bring in 2 Frostburn Weirds. They're fairly easy to cast. Blue-blue is harder than blue-white or blue-1, but it's a 1/4 body that can actually trade with a Smiter.
Yeah. And it's definitely annoying to play against too. It being a 1/4, and as you mentioned, it can trade up or down. That's just really annoying. There are some board states where that thing is just a wall, like a Yolk Ox type thing, where you actually just can't get through it at all. So I actually like sideboarding that card in a lot here if I'm John, just to buy myself some time to get to those verdicts, to get to those Elspeths and those Sphinx's Revelations.
Okay, if you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Cedric Phillips. On the left, Ryan Gearhart piloting green-white aggro, a build that he had smash his face the other night in the hands of Cedric Phillips himself, and now he has decided, hey Cedric, can I play it? And here he is playing for top 8. Across from him, John Mytinger. Blue-white control. I think this is the control boogeyman. Maybe you could argue Esper is the control boogeyman of the current moment.
So we're going to see a force and just pass the turn back here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see if Ryan has a Voice of Resurgence or a Fleecemane Lion to start the show on turn 2. There's your white source, so that's a good start. There's an Experiment 1 a little late to the party as he does pass the turn back. So no 2-drop there, but he does have a couple Boon Satyrs, and he also has a Loxodon Smiter. And speaking of the Frostburn Weird that we thought John was going to bring in, he does bring that in. Another Smiter here drawn for Gearhart. I think you're going to want to start off with the uncounterable threat. There you go. Evolve that Experiment 1 and just pass the turn back here.
And John here, now that he's got mana open, 1 more mana is all it'll take for that Frostburn Weird to trade with a Smiter. Well, not that mana.
Fountain.
Are we going to see another one?
Let's see a Glare here. Yep.
Glare of Heresy. White 1 sorcery. Exile a white permanent. Now this is a really fun little cycle, finally making the Gainsay card from long ago into a cycle of cards. Hate your own color.
Yep. So Gearhart's probably going to just cast another Loxodon Smite here, which I do agree with here. It's going to evolve that Experiment 1. See if he gets in the red zone. He's not going to. He can make like a bluff attack.
I would
have,
attack
like, a giant
there.
Breath. Yeah, and I would attack there too, because you might be able to sneak 3 points of damage. And you know, there's a very high percentage chance that John just does block and you don't actually accomplish anything. But on the off chance that he doesn't block, you're actually quite thrilled. As here's a divination here from John.
I mean, the choice there is to give John the opportunity to think himself into a box and go, oh man, he might have a giant growth. I better not do this. I want to trade with that Smiter.
See, John resolves a divination. He plays the planes and just going to pass the turn back here. So, you know, if you're Gearhart, you want to be a little bit careful. He does draw in a Johnny for the turn. Card that he cannot cast at this moment. We'll see how he wants to go about getting into the red zone. I think that here you just want to get in with both of your creatures, but you don't want to cast Boon Satyr on your turn. You just want to get in your damage, and Boon Satyr is an end of turn effect. You don't want to, you know, play Boon Satyr if he blocks there and pump your guy. Just get your 4 points and just pass the turn back.
4 damage finally connects to John. And remember, Supreme Verdict is not the same as Wrath of God. It is a destroy effect, not a bury effect, which is destroy without regeneration. So that Experiment 1 will be able to live through a single Supreme Verdict.
Yeah, and the Verdict is to play this turn for John. You regenerate the Experiment 1, and then in the end of turn, you do cast the Boon Satyr, and it's actually going to re-evolve the Experiment 1, so then you'll have 6 points of damage again. And again, this is what I talked about at the beginning of this matchup, about just pacing the game in waves, and that's what it allows you to do. Now, I think we might just see a Detention Sphere here to take care of the Smiter, and that's exactly what you're going to see, but I think we're going to see a God's Willing. Yeah, Detention Sphere is going to come into play. The trigger says, okay, what are you going to target? And this is one of the reasons that I really, really like God's Willing in this deck, because the card that I actually went to first was Ranger's Guile. And I was talking to Brad Nelson about it, and I was just like, yeah, I mean, I think the green-white deck should have some sort of targeting effect for 1 mana to be able to counter like Azorius Charm or something. And I was like, I think I'm going to play Ranger's Guile. And Brad's like, why don't you just play God's Willing? You know, it's 1 mana, you get the Scry, which is actually relevant for your deck, and like no one's going to play around it. And I'm just like, yeah, I hadn't considered that. And that's why Brad is a former Player of the Year, and I'm not. And this, you see, like, this makes things difficult now for Mytinger, because this basically counters your Detention Sphere and forces another answer from him, which is exactly where you want to be, and you get the Scry, which is big.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, in lots of ways, people might say, oh, well, you know, a Ranger's Guile, you can get in for that 1 point of damage. But if you really think about it, God's Willing can let you get in for a huge smack of damage. Oh, what do you have for blockers? They're all 1 color? How about I just kill you right now with this God's Willing?
So now here comes Boon Satyr. This is going to put the tension on Mytinger as well to basically have a Syncopate at this point. Syncopate's kind of a beating. No argument can be had there. But, you know, if this does resolve, you get to evolve. Now, it's not going to resolve.
Rift. Cyclonic Rift from John Mytinger to basically just be a expensive unsummon. But that's okay. That was going to be a big guy.
So you see Gearhart has the board advantage here. You can start getting in. There can be no activation with the Frostburn Weird. We see that he did draw, looks like a Voice of Resurgence.
Yeah.
That's
in for 8. And it looks like we're just going to have a chump.
Yep.
To me, that says that there's probably a Supreme Verdict in the hand, but you know what? It might not be there.
Yeah, and for me, okay, I mean, looking at the board position right now, I don't think that there's much of a reason to cast any more creatures. I think I would be happy where I'm at in the board position, because I feel like, you know, you can play around Verdict pretty well right now. You've got those 2 guys out there. I wouldn't want to commit anything else to the board, because now he's going to get Verdict. He's going to lose his 3 creatures, and yeah, he gets to play a Boon Satyr after it. But I still just don't love the board position there. I'd rather just have the 2 guys out there, and then if he does Verdict, I get to play a Boon Satyr, or I can just go Experiment 1, play Voice, pass the turn back, and repace the game that way.
Looks like he has definitely an Elspeth in hand. I don't know if I saw a Supreme Verdict, though.
Now, the scary thing here for John is, because Rootborn Defenses is a card, Ryan is repping this very hard, because Ryan is basically saying, yeah, I've got this. And so now, if you're John, and because Rootborn Defenses is so commonly played in all the green-white decks, he has Verdict in his hand, and he's not casting it, because he's actually scared of Rootborn Defenses because how good it is right now. So he says, all right, I'm going to have to go with Detention Sphere, and I guess I have to hope that you don't have another God's Willing. So this actually works out beautifully for Ryan.
And Ryan, Boon Satyr, EOT. That's going to trigger an Evolve. 10 power on the table.
And if he does draw a White Source, I think he's probably going to try to go for the win, but he does not draw one to be able to go for the win with a Johnny, and he can only, because of Celestia Charm, he can only get across 4, 8, 9, 10. He can only get 12 damage across.
So close.
But all things aren't lost here, because what he can do is he can attack for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, put Mytinger down to 3. And he's going to play his Voice of Resurgence pre-combat in case there's an Azorius Charm showing up to the party, so he gets his value off of that. So there is your Voice pre-combat. Now he's going to get in here. No Evolve from the Experiment 1. He's going to get in for 10 points of damage, put Mytinger down to 3, and then what's going to happen presumably, is that Verdict is going to get cast, it's going to kill everything, the voice token's going to come into play so long as Gearhart doesn't forget and he can actually finish him off with the Selesnya Charm. That is the sequence of events I believe is going to see happen.
Well,
I swear I have no dog in the race. I promise I have no dogs in this race.
We'll have to see if Ryan has the same play in mind. And John, Verdict. There it is. Yep. And we see the Elemental enter play, replacing the Voice of Resurgence. Ryan untaps. I can't tell how much mana that John has untapped, if it's just that one,
He's
if there's
just got
more.
the one, and he could have Rapid Hybridization, but this forced him to have it. He does not, and we're going to go to a third and final game here between Gearhart and Mytinger, Green-White Aggro versus Blue-White Control, but that's what I talk about with the waves of guys, the pacing of the game, because, you know, with Mono Red, you can't actually play longer. You don't want to ever play a game like that when you're playing Mono Red. I guess maybe with Bertoli's version you may want to, but
maybe.
with Turtenwald's version, it's just like, all right, all my guys, and cross my fingers. With this, there's a lot more play about what you can do, and it also forces Mytinger to actually consider his options. Again, he had Verdict on that turn, but Gearhart was repping Rootborn defenses so hard that he's like, I don't think I can cast Verdict, because if I do and he has defenses, I'm just dead. So there's some play there.
I think Ryan did a very good job of, again, going with what Philip Bertorelli called playing Puppeteer.
Yep. I think he did a nice job of it too, and I didn't even realize. And Puppeteer is actually a really good way to phrase that, because I didn't even think about the fact that he could just, by playing the Experiment one, he can just say that, yeah, I've got Runeborn defenses. There's no way you can cast Verdict, because it's so stock in all of the list right now that everyone who's playing a Blue-White Control deck, when you're playing in Screen-White, the first thing that you think of is, God, Rootborn defenses. I got to make sure I get this Verdict in a good situation. And that's part of the reason I like Boon Satyr so much, is because now you've got tricks at 3 mana that represent multiple different things. And even if he doesn't have even if he does greenlight the Verdict there and we don't have Rootborn defenses, you just cast the Boon Satyr and get to keep attacking. Yeah, that's the big deal.
I mean, whether it's the question of Cryptic Command, or, you know, dropping a huge fairy on the table, or whether it's the question of Restoration Angel versus, say, a War Leader's Helix, whenever you've got those two things that could happen, it can make it very hard to make decisions, because they both often go down very different paths of what's the right play.
And think about green-white decks from the past. I mean, you've been playing Magic a very long time, longer than me. You think about green-white decks, how often can a green-white deck actually play that game? Normally a green-white deck is tap out, play a guy. My best friend who taught me how to play Magic, Joe Gagliardi, always said, green-white, all right, I'll play a creature. Next turn I'll play a bigger creature. The following turn, a bigger creature. Keep doing that until they die. Normally, you don't ever get to see a green-white deck actually be able to play on their opponent's turn and have actually decisions to make about how they want to pace the game. Think about green-white now. If they have green, white mana up, on turn 4, they just pass the turn. You have to worry about Boon Satyr, Rootborn defenses, Advent of the Worm, God's Willing, Selesnya Charm. When have you ever had to worry about anything when green-white has mana up? Anything!
I mean, when you're going way back in time, most of the times it's just the huge monsters. If we think about what Osip did at the Pro Tour that he won a million trillion years ago, which is some big monsters. You know, if we go earlier, if we go back to the dawn of Magic history, there was like big monsters and Swords to Plowshares. You know, so Swords to Plowshares basically being the super path to exile for those of you who don't play Legacy. But yeah, right now, there's a lot of tricksy going on here in this deck.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the reason that I like this deck, and this is the way I like to play the attacking decks that I get to play. You know, be it Kithkin from years past, you know, be it Mythic when that was the best deck, and Josh Layton won Nationals with that. I like aggro decks that actually, you know, they get to have some play to them. Yes, they do. There are some mindless draws where you're just like, yeah, guy, you're dead. But the games where you actually get to play Magic, it actually gives you an advantage instead of being a Naya Blitz type strategy, which is just cross your fingers and hope I kill him on turn 4 or 5.
Turn 1, we have an Experiment 1 versus just an island. Does John have a Frostburn Weird? Nope, a Mutavault. That's well, if nothing joins the party, that's a defender. Yeah,
I mean, that could be very, very telling, too, that, you know, maybe he doesn't have any more lands. I like playing a Plains here and just getting into the red zone. You know, depending on what Gearhart has, because he does have a Fleece main line, but now there's a tension of, do I want to play around Syncopate? It's because I'm going to run Fleece main line out there, and there is Syncopate for 1. So he's going to get his 1 point of damage across, but I think he could have, you know, he could have made Syncopate a lot worse here.
John untaps. Does he have color problems? Or is it just putting down that Mutavault to represent a possible blocker?
Oh, no.
Color and number. Wow. I think that unless Ryan has no follow-up, this is going to be a very rough one here for John Mytinger. Could be all done right now unless Ryan has nothing.
Gearhart's going to play his land on tap in Temple Garden. He's going to go down to 18, but I like this obviously because it allows him to play around Syncopate now. He gets to attack here for 1. I don't think there's a world in which you can activate Mutavault to try to call your opponent out and say you don't have it. And almost played the wrong card there. Here's a Selesnya Charm. Going to make the 2/2 and evolve the Experiment 1.
You know, there's the Duke.
gives away the Rootborn defenses now, so that's not so good. I mean, if you're John, you're like, I was right to play around Rootborn defenses last game, sort of.
And we see the Cyclonic Rift used as an unsummon against Reed Duke, the 2/2 Knight, and since it's a token, it's gone for good.
And he draws the Supreme Verdict and passes the turn back, so we might not get a very competitive third game of Magic here on John's end. It's not over quite yet. I mean, we don't know the contents of his hand. Wouldn't be surprised to see a Detention Sphere hanging out over there. So again, while things are going very well here for Gearhart, you have to be very careful about how you want to play your things, because he can do exactly what it is, which is play Experiment 1, cast Selesnya Charm, evolve both of my guys, and then John goes, I drew a white land, finally, cast Detention Sphere. That's exactly what could happen now.
Ooh boy, let's see what happens. Does he have Detention Sphere? And if so, is there a God's Willing around to protect the creatures on Ryan's side of the board?
Ooh, it's
no.
Divination.
Second best nation, Divination.
So now this is kind of a dream scenario for Ryan, because now he gets to go end of turn, cast Selesnya Charm, put a 2/2 into play, double evolve my guys. Now I have in play 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points of power, and I have Rootborn defenses, which you know about, and there's like nothing you can do about. Now, did he double evolve? He forgot an evolve trigger.
We got 2/2 Knight, and then 2.
Oh no, you're
2/2s.
right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You can't evolve the other one. You're right. My apologies.
There we go. We've got.
It should just evolve every time. That's stupid.
That'd be okay. Cloudfin Raptor would get a lot better.
When you play a creature, it just evolves every time. Big draw there for Gearhart for the turn. He drew a God's Willing, so if it is Detention Sphere, he does have the counter spell for it. So that's a huge draw, but it looks like it's a Frostburn Weird. All right.
Okay, nothing wrong with a Weird. Weird, unable to be pumped, just is basically a big wall.
Mytinger sitting on a 4-ish to draw in here for Gearhart. Yeah, you mentioned it. It cannot be pumped right now.
It does take an Is It mana to pump that Is It Weird.
Yeah. Everybody getting the resin here. I'm interested to see if John is going to actually get that Mutavault up here to block. Knowing that the opponent has Rootborn defenses, do you actually risk it?
He's getting to a point where his life total is so low, he might just have to suck it up and say, okay, here you go. I mean, maybe he's got a Supreme Verdict in hand and he's trying to bait it out.
That's how I feel. You know, if he has because we know he has a Verdict, because we saw him draw one, so the question is, does he have another white mana that comes into play untapped? Because what we could see here is go, all right, activate Mutavault, block your guy, or are you going to use your Rootborn defenses to save your guy?
I mean, I don't know what's in John's hand. He's been hiding it from us pretty good.
100% there's a Verdict there.
Then I think he should activate the Mutavault.
You see a Divination over there right now as well. So John's going to go down to 5. Draws his card for the turn. Knows that Gearhart does have a Rootborn defenses from earlier because of him accidentally showing it. Maybe a little nervous playing for top 8 on camera. Hollowed Fountain coming into play tapped.
Island in hand as well. Looks like 2 Supreme Verdicts in hand. I think I see 2 Supreme Verdicts and an Elspeth, and then cards that I could not identify.
And again, he's in the situation right now, is Mytinger, where, you know, if he casts a Verdict, like, first of all, if he plays that land on tap, he goes down to 3. He casts Verdict, he just dies because he knows that Gearhart has the Rootborn defenses in his hand. What did Gearhart draw this turn? I think that's a Smiter. It is a Smiter. That's pretty big because it's uncounterable, but more importantly, it evolves those Experiment ones. So that's actually a really, really big draw step here, because you're going to get a guarantee evolution now.
Yeah, and that means that those Experiment ones are going to be big enough that they won't be traded with by a single Mutavault. And also, just regeneration's not a bad thing.
Now, I wonder what's happening here because there's no evolution that's taken place yet. I'm wondering to make sure we knew where we're at in the turn, making sure that he did announce those evolve triggers. So those will happen. Experiment ones are going to go up to 3/3s, and I think again you're in a situation where you just jam.
And right now, Azorius Charm I think has to be in John Mytinger's hand, or I think it's over.
Yeah, I think Azorius Charm, a card like Cyclonic Rift, would be pretty good right now as well.
Yeah.
And Frostburn Weird, because those things are 3/3s, that's where it makes things really difficult because now he's just facing down like a lethal attack right now. And if it is Azorius Charm, you might see the God's Willing get used.
So possible blocks. If he doesn't have an Azorius Charm, he can spend a white mana to make a Mutavault, and then have 2 blue open to activate or to block to activate on the Frostburn Weird.
So this is going to be the only block.
Do you have any effects?
If our life totals are right, he's sitting at 5.
Well, Ryan is active player, so John's just making sure that active player does stuff.
This is pass priority. Rev for 1. Okay.
That'll keep me alive.
Yeah. He's going to go up to 6 and then down to 1 from damage. And just pass the turn back. And again, if you're Gearhart, and this is, again, part of the reason I really like this deck, is that you're so good against Supreme Verdict right now. You've got Rootborn in your hand, you've got 2 creatures that can regenerate if you didn't have Rootborn, so you're sitting pretty.
What about Elspeth? If there's not a flash creature, Elspeth 3/1/1s.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh boy.
That's true.
Assuming that there's a land in there that comes into play untapped. Oh boy.
I think I see a Hollow Fountain.
I thought I saw a Hollow Fountain too.
Ah, Elspeth. And because it makes white tokens, oh, well, no, he's okay, actually. So, because he's tapped out, he casts Rootborn Defenses on the end step, populates a token, so he has enough guys to actually get it. Now, if he sees the play, he ends up winning, but it took me a minute to actually see it, because I always think of it as a way to kill, to counter Wrath, but never as a way to kill. And yeah, he sees it. So he's going to cast Rootborn Defenses on the end step, say, populate my Reduke token, give me 2 Redukes, and that is it. So Ryan Gearhart wins this match over John Mytinger, 2-1, green-white aggro, moving into the top 8, defeating blue-white control.
Yeah, I'm surprised he was able to do so well with this little kid deck,
Yeah, green-white dudes.